Dream SMP Season 3 is starting up right now, and since I've been pretty invested in watching since the beginning of the first Disc War, I thought doing a sort of retrospective would be nice. I hesitated between talking about the beginning, Season 1, or Season 2, but I settled on Season 2 because I find it a lot more interesting of a case study. I really enjoyed watching, but some negatives caught my attention more than in earlier seasons. So this is a critique and review of Dream SMP Season 2, where I'll take a look at all the positives, but also the negatives, and use these negatives to find an important lesson about storytelling. Let's just start, reviewing Dream SMP Season 2. So, I just started up with the timeline real quick. I kind of divided it into smaller categories to begin with, which is how I think it progressed. Then we can start talking about the positive first, and then the negatives, so what I personally would change or edit. Around November, end of November, is when the whole L'Manberg destruction happened. So after that, that's when the L'Manberg reconstruction begins. This is kind of a peaceful era where nothing huge was going on. It was mostly Tubbo kind of consolidating power after getting the presidency, and then L'Manberg slowly being built up. Nothing much happening, Tommy just messing around. That changes with George Not Found's house being burnt down, and Tommy is forced to be exiled. So Dream gets Tommy exiled and sent away. That goes on for a while, and then eventually Tommy decides, no, actually, this is just not gonna happen. And after that, moves on to the Tommy and Techno alliance, running away from exile, going with Techno, uniting together to get the discs back. Maybe, that's such a good idea. That couldn't possibly backfire, since it has been set up that way. They couldn't possibly go back on that. And then after that, we get L'Manberg Destruction Part 2, where they immediately go back on that, and Tommy and Techno are once again at odds. Techno annihilates L'Manberg with a little bit of help from Dream. And then after that, it leads up to the confrontation with Dream. So that means it's, preparing for the battle with Dream. Tommy and Tubbo are preparing for that. And then, I guess, spoiler alert, but in the latest stream, well, not the latest stream now, but like 2 streams ago, confronting Dream, Dream just thrashes them. He absolutely just, pummels them. But they're able to call in for reinforcements, and so Dream is sent to the prison, and Tommy and Tubbo win. Tommy gets the discs back, and now Dream is put away, and everything seems to be going for the best. So that's the timeline. That's how this has been progressing. Before getting into more negative aspects, I do want to emphasize the positives because I really enjoy, obviously, since I've been keeping up with this. So the positives, first of all, it is very fun to watch because of the chemistry that all of the characters have and how they interact with each other, on stream. All of these creators know each other, and so they're able to bounce off of each other well and create interesting content to watch. So that's the first positive. It is, it's just an entertaining show to watch. Another one is, it is, doing something no one else is doing. They were able to just kind of have the guts to go, we're gonna do this now. Let's just write a story. We're gonna play the role of characters, and we're just, we're not gonna care if it's been done before, if people are necessarily gonna, wanna watch that or not. We just know that it's gonna be an entertaining thing that is gonna have value. And so, having the guts to do something that no one else is doing before, that's a pretty great thing to do. And so even though this is still a positive that also worked with season 1, obviously it still holds up here, and still just props to them. I think what it boils down to is just that it is entertaining to watch. It's a fun stream, it's a fun show, and that's why people keep watching, even though obviously it's not like perfect. The fact that it's not perfect is also one of the alluring aspects, because it's like, hey, these are just people just writing their story. This isn't like professional screenwriters that decided, hey, let's use Minecraft and Twitch to make lots of views and money. It's people who liked telling stories and thought of this new way to tell stories. It is overall still a good story. It's not like its only quality is that it exists. People don't watch this and people don't appreciate this simply because it's something new or it's something no one else is doing. People appreciate it because it's something new, and on top of that, it's really good. The story is really interesting, and although not everything went exactly how I hoped it would, and I was disappointed in some aspects, what they're doing with the characters and what they're trying to, create is still a nice product. It's still a nice story. And so now we tie into some of the negatives that I had with this. There are like two prominent ones, and then after that, a smaller one. You know what? I'll go with the smaller one first. I thought that a lot of the early half of the season 2 was kind of useless in the sense that it kind of loops back to the beginning by the time the Tommy and Techno alliance breaks down. Because at the beginning of all of this, L'Manberg's just been destroyed. So Tommy, Tubbo, and all of L'Manberg doesn't like Techno, right? And they don't necessarily like Dream either, right? Because Dream has been fighting against them also. So there's L'Manberg, and then there's Techno that they dislike, and there's also Dream that they dislike. And then Dream gets Tommy exiled, so Tommy's against L'Manberg. That's an interesting new twist. And then after that, he allies himself with Techno, so he's against Dream and L'Manberg. That's interesting. But then immediately, well, not immediately, but pretty soon after, he just kind of goes back to Tommy kind of leaves Techno, goes back with Tubbo and L'Manberg, and then Techno teams up with Dream. So the only thing that's changed between the initial destruction of L'Manberg and right before its second destruction is the fact that Techno and Dream are now no longer neutral. They're helping each other destroy it. I feel like there was a lot of wasted potential there in the sense that we've looped back around to the same place in the story, and it doesn't feel like a lot of meaningful change has happened. The whole thing with like Tommy hating Dream and thinking he was manipulative and everything like that, that's true. He was. But he already disliked Dream before being sent into exile. You know what I mean? Had Dream been some sort of third-party character, someone that he didn't really have strong opinions about, and then it's revealed he's been manipulating him, that would be a lot stronger than Dream manipulating him, because he's always been kind of like that overarching enemy. So that's one of my minor gripes. It's not as big as the other two because it could be pretty easily tweaked. I just found it a little bit off-putting that when the community house is blown up and it all just kind of goes back to before, kind of goes back to normal, it felt like there was some unresolved tension there. I was just like, it felt too bad because more could have been done. And then second negative, I guess I'm going to put these two further down because these are more important. My first one is going to be something that is easier solved than the second one. The pacing was off. It felt off to me in the sense that the L'Manberg reconstruction, when, they're rebuilding with Tubbo and Tommy and everything like that, that seemed to last a good amount of time. That was fun. That was interesting. It lasted an okay amount of time. But the Tommy exile part of this whole season, that whole arc, it feels like that lasted way too long. And to be honest, maybe this is just my opinion, but it kind of overstayed its welcome in the sense that Tommy being exiled and staying there for a few days was good, and that was an interesting idea, and the whole Dream manipulating thing, that was an interesting spin. I was very into that whole arc when it began. But as time went on, it started to feel repetitive, and like it was kind of, slow. I could tell they were trying to make it, still interesting and relevant and everything like that, because they were having people visit and, stuff was still going on behind the scenes. But it didn't make you feel very invested in it. It slowed down a lot in that period. And then Tommy allies himself with Techno. I felt like that lasted a good amount of time also. That was pretty good. But then after that, with the community house being destroyed and them blowing up L'Manberg, I felt like that was a lot too short. That was way too short. They I don't know how long it was, but it felt like in just like a week or something, they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna destroy L'Manberg time number 2. And that's like, oh, okay, so we spent a huge amount of time, weeks, with Tommy being in exile, but now we're like zooming right past the fact that Tommy's back with Tubbo and L'Manberg, and the fact that Techno and Dream are now allied together. It just felt like that went by quite quickly, if I'm being honest. So the thing is, the pacing wasn't terrible, but it just felt like certain aspects that should have been longer were sped up. I think for the sake of reaching the end of the season. And certain things that should have been shorter were kept long because, maybe it was fun content to make, or maybe it was because it was interesting content at first, and maybe it wasn't necessarily thought ahead, like, oh, this is going to get long if it lasts for like weeks and weeks on end. So that's my first one, is pacing. And my second one is character importance. And this is pretty crucial to me. The main characters of this whole season have been Tommy, Techno, Dream, and Tubbo. Those have been the 4 main characters, and everyone else has been a side character. The only, I was gonna say 2, but the only real moment where other characters held importance was with the Butcher Army trying to defeat Techno, and the fact that that backfired and that made him, angry at L'Manberg again. That is the only moment that like other characters have been in the spotlight. There's been Sam that's building the prison, which came in handy for the end of the season. But I don't really consider that an integral part of this season 2, because it just wasn't shown enough, and it's going to be way more important in season 3 now that Dream is actually in jail, rather than for a few moments at the end. There was that whole egg story that was going on, but that was also separate. That was kind of a side story that's been slowly growing, and now it's going to make its way into the main story with season 3, I anticipate. So those are the 2 kind of side arcs that have been going on, and they didn't really hold any importance in Dream SMP season 2. The only things that held importance was Discs and L'Manberg and fighting against Dream. And I think that can be compelling, since it really makes this a Tommy and Tubbo versus Dream fight. Characters are the core motivation for the season, and I think that's great. But the thing is, it creates quite a disconnect with season 1, where in season 1, although there were main characters and kind of sub-characters still held importance and emotional value and charge, and there was still stuff that was interesting that was going on, Fundy wasn't necessarily a main character at first, and I mean, he wasn't a main character throughout the season, but he still held importance through his emotional connection with Wilbur. It just goes to show that I feel like during Dream SMP season 1, all of the characters had something interesting about them. Something was going on. There was something that was important to the overarching story, and they contributed in a pretty meaningful way. Even if it wasn't necessarily plot, it was character emotions and that sort of value. Whereas here in Dream SMP season 2, it feels like characters have a lot less meaningful importance. that doesn't mean they're useless. They're there and they're funny and they help create good content, and that's all well and good. But when it comes down to the actual plot, it felt like a lot of them were kind of put on the back burner, less in the spotlight. So those are my two main things. The fact that the story loops back around without real change, I think that can be easily fixed with the pacing and the character endpoints. Because if the pacing was quicker at that original part, it wouldn't feel that important. It would just be like, okay, we're back where we were before. But it's not a big deal because, you know, the whole exile arc was fun and everything like that, and it didn't last too long. And with more characters, that whole area wouldn't actually have been a return to the norm without characters changing, because what would have happened is other characters would have changed. Even if, let's say, we went with the same story structure overall, with the same plot, and Tommy went back to Tubbo and Techno and Dream allied, other characters would have had meaningful change in the meantime, and so it wouldn't have been as though it was quote-unquote a waste during that time. There's some other minor gripes, but that's just up to personal preference. That's less a whole thing on Dream SMP and more just myself. Like the fact that they blew up L'Manberg again. I was kind of disappointed at that because it felt, at the time, it kind of felt a little uninspired, which might sound harsh, but it was just that had been done before. And the fact that they would confront in L'Manberg again felt like the perfect opportunity for change to happen and for something unexpected to happen and for it to feel like it was going to go the same way as before, but the shift suddenly at the very end and then something different happens. I mean, I'm not going to say exactly how I think it would have gone because there's a lot that goes into that. But the fact that it kind of went play by play like before was a little underwhelming. But that's more up to personal preference. I have a reason for which I think all of this has happened. The lesson I've taken from this is not meant to be like an attack on them or saying like Dream SMP Season 1 was so much better or something. But there is a lack of singular vision, and I think that shines through. What I mean by that is I think that the fact lots of streamers were involved and the fact that everyone could pitch in and say how they wanted their character to go and all that stuff, from what I've gotten of how the script was made, I think that's great. I think that's important because having different ideas and opposing ideas and stuff like that helps create a more interesting environment and helps create a more interesting story because it's not just one person thinking it up by themselves. It's lots of people collaborating to create something great. But the problem with that is that if you don't have someone who has a singular vision, I guess at the top, you would say, it can easily become kind of discombobulated and all over the place. In Dream SMP Season 1, I think, you know, different people had input. But what's for sure is that Wilbur was head writer. And so that means that he was able to think, this is the way I want the whole season to evolve. This is the way I want all of these character arcs to evolve. And then, you know, obviously talking with other streamers and the other content creators and stuff like that, that can be refined and adjusted. But on the whole, there was still someone there who said, this is my vision of how the story should go. The pacing is, for me, clearly the fact that there isn't someone thinking of the overall picture, and it's more like all of the characters are evolving at once, which is cool because that's a kind of like chaos, controlled chaos. But it also means that if you're looking overall, it's going to be a whole lot less unified and homogenous and a whole lot more all over the place. It feels to me like it's multiple stories progressing at the same time on the same server, rather than one story progressing and tying in lots of different elements from all over the place. And so the Dream SMP Season 1 felt more like that. It felt like one big story tying in lots of different people and lots of different things from all over the server. Whereas Dream SMP Season 2 felt more like lots of different interesting stories kind of going on in parallel and sometimes crossing over with one another. Overall, I still think it was very fun. It was a very entertaining watch. It's still something very innovative and obviously new, so that's why I think some of these mistakes may have happened. I think Wilbur has hinted at the fact that he wants to come on as head writer. So whether he does or not, that depends on other content creators and if they want to do that or not. But I think that a blend of the way Dream SMP Season 1 was written and Dream SMP Season 2 was written would be perfect. Because that would allow for the content creators to feel, I guess, more in power with their characters if they are directly contributing to that. And so I think that's a positive of Season 2. But a positive of Season 1 was the overall story kind of staying consistent and making sense and having this one overall arcing idea, you know. So those are my thoughts on Dream SMP Season 2. What I'm hoping with Dream SMP Season 3 is that Wilbur comes on as head writer or someone else comes on as head writer. I just want someone to come on as head writer with everyone contributing. That means it's going to be a lot of work for the head writer because he needs to take in what everyone wants for their characters and try to blend it all together into an interesting story. That's a lot of work. But I think that is what would make the most interesting story. And that is what would make the most compelling story to watch, especially with lots of stuff that's going on right now, like the egg and the prison and, you know, the revival of Wilbur and Schlatt. That's going to be essential in Season 3. And I feel like as all of these different and important elements tie together, it is going to be all the more essential that there is someone with a vision, you know, keeping it all in check. But I think that'll be all for me. Thank you very much for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's cool. You know, you've made it this far in the video. That means you might have found this interesting. Some of my other videos might be interesting to you as well. And if you are watching this on Twitch right now, you can follow. If you're watching this on YouTube, there's a link in the description as well. You can, you know, click that and come follow. That's cool as well. I do all sorts of stuff on the Twitch channel. So thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you for making it to the end of the video, and I'll see you next time.